Hey, good day, ladies and gentlemen, boys and berries. Here we go at Synergy Cafe. Another day here in Synergy Cafe. I had one earlier this morning and not one this afternoon. And her name is Liz, and she's got a very interesting career, we'll call it. I don't like calling them businesses anymore because that sounds like busyness. Busyness, busyness. It sounds the same to me, and I don't like to be too busy. So I'm going to go get Liz. She's in the green room enjoying some of our digital hors d'oeuvres. And there are also some digital Girl Scout cookies back there if she's partaking in those. They're very low cal, so you don't have to worry about eating too many. Let's go find Liz. She's in the green room, and I'll be right back. There she is. Good day.
Hi. Hello. Nice
How
to
are
see you,
you
Brad.
today?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm wonderful and a half, and then some to the 10th power of infinity.
Wow, you're doing really well today.
Yeah, but I'm a little biased.
Oh, yeah. Well,
So
so
what,
am I.
what part of the city do you live in? Where do you reside in office?
So I actually reside way down south in Minnesota in a town called Waseca, which is about
Oh,
20 minutes, I believe it's west from Owatonna.
yeah, I know Wasika. I know a
Yeah.
girl that had that. She used to drive up every day to a school.
I'm
It's a
currently
trek.
doing that drive. I know exactly what
Okay,
drive she had to do. I'm doing that one right now myself.
maybe we can grab a map or something and just kind of grab it and slide it a little closer to the Twin Cities because you can do that with technology nowadays.
It's crazy. That'd be so cool.
Well, I've got a little graphic that I put together for your business, and maybe somebody saw it if they're already on. And that's what it's all
Yeah.
about right there. Get dive certified and marine classes. And then there's mermaid parties. We'll talk about those later and save them for last.
Heck yeah.
What got you into this? Why did you decide to do this of all things? I mean, Minnesota is got 10,000 lakes, but it's cold under that water. And I would think you'd want to go to the blue sky or blue water in like Cancun or Jamaica or Roatan. That's a diving
Oh,
community, isn't
yeah.
it?
Yeah, that's a really nice place to go and visit for sure. So I originally got started working at a local aquarium here. I worked at the one at the Mall of America, and I was an educator. I fell in love with the animals there and decided that was going to be my career of choice. And so I then went in and got an environmental science degree just online. I did spend a little bit of time in Florida doing some research and really fell in love with Florida. Just loved the blue water. I loved the people. I loved the climate. It was really nice not having to deal with snow every day. So I ended up moving there after my degree was done, and I got a job working with wholesale fish and aquarium science, which isn't necessarily in the ocean science field, but it is, it's perpendicular. It's right next to it.
Sure.
And so after working some time out there and doing a little bit more research, doing a little bit more scuba diving, I ended up moving back home. I missed family. I missed working at the aquarium. And so I then went and I got my master's degree online in marine conservation and biodiversity. And I'm finishing up that this week, actually, which is kind of
Yay.
crazy. Yeah, I'm so excited about it. And I just wanted to bring the oceans to people here in Minnesota in these landlocked states. There's people here who have never seen the ocean
Right.
and have always dreamed about seeing the ocean. So that's what it's all about for me is just trying to drive people to the ocean and learn about conservation efforts and how they can help protect the animals that call the oceans home.
Okay. And this is how they get a hold of you. This is your website. That's a nice little short, condensed website. It's great that you had that available.
Oh yeah,
Very
it's
cool.
a really interesting story of how we ended up with the name DiveOne for sure.
Well, I used to vacation in Jamaica, and for a while we went to Montego Bay, and then we started
Yes.
staying in Ocho Rios, and they've got like a man-made cove there, and it's beautiful, just looking down on the mountains, and it's all this aqua blue, and
I feel like I've actually been there before. Jamaica, Montego Bay. I was on a cruise and I think I've been there because
Ocho
I
Rios is
remember it
where the
being
cruise
like a
was.
man-made, yeah. I
Yeah,
remember it being a man-made cove of some sort, and there was a lot of coral reefs, and it was stunning and it was beautiful. They take really good care of their reefs out there because it's a part
Yeah.
of their tourism, and it's part of their tourism there.
So your DiveOne organization here, is it more educational about marine life, or is it more about how to dive?
So we started as a scuba certification company. The founder of Dive One Minnesota, he was a dive instructor, and his whole goal was to get as many scuba divers as possible out into the oceans and into our lakes too. You can actually dive here in Minnesota. This upcoming weekend is the ice diving festival,
Sure.
which I am not partaking in. I'm good. No, thank you. But anyway, and so once I took it over and having a lot of experience educating kids about marine life and marine conservation, I really wanted to delve more into the educational aspect of things. So, yes, we still do scuba certifications with our partnered scuba shops around Minnesota, but we also go into schools and we do educational programs. And that's how we get our mermaids involved, which again, we'll discuss a little later.
Secret mermaids. Yeah,
Oh,
I
yeah.
considered diving. I remember when I was younger, and then when I started reading more about it, the idea of going real low and then the pressures and all that kind of stuff, and that all scared me. And then I just decided not to. But they used to
Yeah.
dive at Square Lake because Square Lake is a very clean lake. You
Yes,
remember?
Square Lake is probably the best lake. Well, not the best lake, but it is the lake to go scuba diving in. And most people who go and dive Square Lake are beginners. They're just learning. I just got my rescue certification this past summer and I had to dive Square Lake. They've turned the entire lake into a little obstacle course underwater.
Oh,
So they
really?
have it's really yeah, there's even I believe there's a toilet down there, and when you open the toilet, there's a little lobster that just hello. Yeah. So it's really fun, but it's also to test your skills underwater as well. They've got these really large rings in different shapes and in different heights. And so the idea is that you're working on your buoyancy and going up and down and making sure that you actually understand how to control your own gear underwater.
Sure. Yeah, there's a
Yeah.
lot of that stuff that people don't think about. They see people just kind of going through the water. They don't realize there's all those other, if you're too heavy
Yeah.
or too light. And
Yeah. The
there's
gear
also a
is
lot of different opportunities. I used to office with a guy that he knew how to scuba dive, and he had a little side business where he'd go to the golf courses and go retrieve all the balls out of the
that's
trap.
so cool. Yeah, I've seen those actually before, but it's a really interesting job. A lot of people don't realize that scuba diving is a big part in marine science in general, but also the police use scuba divers.
Sure.
Firefighters, they even some of them have scuba certifications themselves as well to help assist with particular parts of their job. So it's you'd be surprised how many industries actually utilize scuba diving, and one of the most interesting ones is NASA. Astronauts have scuba certifications. It's
Oh, I
crazy. Yeah.
suppose they probably it's like the weightlessness kind of thing, maybe.
Yeah, it is. They actually rebuilt the program is called NEMO, and they ended up developing the entire International Space Station in a very large pool. And it's submerged, and the astronauts, before they go into space, that's part of their training program is to go underwater with scuba divers and actually work on the International Space Station so they understand what it's going to look like when they're actually in space. So
Sure.
it's the closest that normal people can get to being in space.
And I suppose it's probably really similar, not being able to breathe underwater versus not being able to breathe when there's no oxygen.
Yeah,
Is that kinda
it's
scary?
it's scary, but the training is there to protect you. The training is there to kind of lift you up if you are nervous, as well as you never dive alone. I mean, we'll see a lot of horror movies where a person goes diving alone and things don't work out, but that never happens. Everyone dives with a buddy. We actually call them dive buddies for life in Dive One because the idea is that your dive buddy is going to become your best friend by the end. And we actually have had some dive buddies end up going to each other's weddings, going to each other's baby showers, being part of their corporations. And so the dive buddy is really there to support you and to make sure that you have everything you need underwater, and vice versa too. So you never dive alone. And yeah, the gear can be a little complicated, but the idea is that your certification is going to help you through that. They're going to teach you how to use that gear before you even get the gear on. They're going to put your gear on in a pool where you can stand up, so that way you get comfortable with it before you actually go and jump into the ocean, where there are
Right.
currents, riptides, different haloclines and thermoclines, and all these different factors that are involved with ocean diving. So the pool is your safe situation where you get to learn about the gear before you actually get to jump into the ocean.
Well, I suppose there's all these other things you got to be concerned about the currents and all that stuff. It's almost like if you're floating in the sky and the wind comes along, you got the
Yeah.
water currents that are moving you around. But you had mentioned the dive buddies and going to like weddings and things, so I thought that was a good segue that we could go into
Yeah.
this stuff right here. The mermaid parties, dun dun dun. So when
Yes,
we were at
we
that
have.
networking events, then my friend come running over because she knew that I was involved with the events a lot. She goes, "I got somebody you need to talk to." And the
Yeah.
idea, I've seen events where they have these big giant aquariums, and then there's a mermaid in there. It's kind of weird. I didn't believe that mermaids existed, and I just saw one with my own two eyes.
Yeah. Our mermaids are awesome. We work with one mermaid in the area named Mermaid Nevea. That is her mermaid name, and her whole purpose is to support marine conservation. So yes, it's about the kids, but there is a level of conservation involved where she is educating the kids about marine life, how to protect our mermaids that are out there. And she is actually a Minnesota mermaid. So she lives in our Minnesota lakes. She is a cold water mermaid.
Cold
Yes.
water,
Yeah,
a very cold
they're
water mermaid.
everywhere. They're everywhere. She's met mermaids who are from the Florida Springs, who are from Alaska, who are from the Caribbean. They're everywhere. This mermaid community is huge. And so it's really fun to be able to somehow get them involved in what we're doing at DiveOne.
So you're talking about the mermaids end up being more of an educational thing for kids in the marine life,
Yeah,
or
yeah, they can. So we currently don't have the ability to have her swim. We don't have a tank. Those actually are very expensive setups, and that is something that we're raising money for. But Mermaid Nevea is available for events. She's actually gone to the Minnesota Boat Show a couple times. She was crowned Miss Mermaid Minnesota, which is actually a thing. I didn't know that was a thing about until a year ago when she was crowned. And they actually just started a mermaid convention here in Minnesota this past weekend
really?
was the first one. Yeah, it was really cool.
Land
I
of
didn't get to
10,000
go, but
mermaids.
yeah, from her perspective, it sounded like a really cool event. So she actually goes to all of the events, and how she is incorporated into DiveOne is by going into schools, and specifically for those elementary school kids who don't really understand adaptations or conservation. Like, it's a little bit more of a trickier topic for them. And so she goes in, she reads them stories, and they do activities together. They get to touch her tail, which is a really big highlight. And she'll also work with other mermaids in the area to get kids their mermaid certifications, so they actually get into a tail themselves and they swim around. So there's a really large community, and we want to get more involved in that. But currently, this is what we are doing as DiveOne.
Well, there used to be events that got very extravagant with them back in the days, and they've toned down a
Yeah.
little bit. But still, as far as them tanks, there's events that have the big enough budget where they just build one because they want one, and they're going to get rid of it after the weekend. And so there might be some kind
Yes,
of thing that they want to have a mermaid as an attraction at their trade show or something, and they'll
that's the
just put the
goal.
money into it because maybe
Yeah.
somebody they might have like a water purification system they're trying to sell, and that's the big draw that draws these people into their big giant booth, and you can
Yeah.
staff them with human fish.
That's the idea. We also want to utilize these big, large tanks for scuba divers too. I went to a fair, oh, when I was younger. I think it was actually the state fair, the Minnesota State Fair, and they had a scuba diver who worked for the police force who was actually in the water, like talking with kids with a little like slate.
Okay.
They just called slates, and you just write on them. You can That's how you take data underwater. And
Mhm.
he was like showing, and they were like almost communicating back and forth via these slates. And so the kids would ask them write a question down, and then the scuba diver would answer. And it was an underwater thing, and I so badly want to get my hands on a tank so I can do that too when we go into these events.
So these tanks, I'm thinking of a tank they just temporarily make it and they seal it off so they can fill it full of water and do the exhibit. But are you thinking that these tanks are there's something more to them? Is there something special about them?
Well, we would like to get our hands on those types of tanks where they are just like the quick setups and then takedowns for just events. Those are the easiest ones to just come in, because then we don't have to charge as much either, because that tank is going to require a truck, it's going to require transport fees. And so, yes, we would like to utilize a very large acrylic tank, almost like a fish tank, if you will. They do make those specifically for mermaids, but for the time being, focusing more on having one that's just easily take down, set up kind of thing. It's way easier in terms of transport fees. Plus, it's going to be way cheaper for the event that would be hiring us.
Yeah, I suppose there's the cold water's an issue too because that's a lot of water you put in a double
Yeah,
human sized tank.
you'd be surprised. Mermaid Nevea can handle her cold water. She is a Minnesota mermaid after all, so she's making those snow angels out on the ice all the time.
So here's the graphic once again and how to find you. It's diveone.org, and you've got certification and classes and these mermaid parties. It's
All the
intriguing.
things. Yeah, it's a unique company for a unique place to have said company.
And what will they find if they go to your website? What's on
For
there?
sure, yeah. So we don't have our educational programs up just quite yet. We are putting our T's and crossing our I's. Is that the expression? Anyway,
It's cross your
um,
T's, dot your I's, and
dot
don't
your
forget
I's.
the lowercase J's too. Some people forget the lowercase J.
Lowercase j's. We can't
Got it.
forget the lowercase j's. Yes. So the programs for the educational stuff is not yet up on our website. However, if they were to email us, you can call us as well. We can set up any kinds of programs that you're interested in, any kind of event that you're interested in, or if you just have any more questions for us. Uh, or as well as if you have a trip in mind, we do these scuba trips to all these different places. You can start from just getting your beginning certification all the way up into if you want to be a dive master, which is, I kind of call it the equivalent of being a Jedi master. Like you are
Ooh.
the top of, yeah, you're at the top of your field for sure. And so we do have all these different trips, but we always like to hear from our clients, hey, I want to go to Hawaii. We don't currently have a Hawaii trip up and running yet because we're trying to find a culturally appropriate way to go. And
Mhm.
so if they want to go to Hawaii, we would figure out a way to make that happen for them. So we're really well developed to be able to just work with any clients that come our way. So we do also have in October a women's retreat coming up, which is really interesting. We're doing Pilates, yoga. We're actually trying to get a yacht involved so we can have dinner on a yacht. There's going to be professionals there teaching our guests about journaling exercises. We're going to be doing baking exercises, which sounds weird, but our people know what they're talking about when they say baking exercises. As
Sure.
well as Pilates. We're doing kayak yoga, or sorry, not kayak, it's the paddleboard yoga. So it's really just going to be an all inclusive type of event for women to come and learn a little bit more, as well as make more friends. That's what we're all about, is to not only educate guests about the oceans and get them closer to the oceans, but it's also to make as many friends as you possibly can. Because who doesn't want
And
more friends?
and maybe some Mermaid 101 lessons.
Yes, of course. We actually have mermaids out in Florida who do not diving, free diving certifications in a
Oh,
mermaid tail. So we are
wow.
working slowly on getting a trip where students would be able to go and put a mermaid tail on and get a certification in Florida, as well as get some really cool photography done of them in a tail.
Well, if you're going to do it, I would say do it in Florida rather than Minnesota.
Oh, yes, yes. I will say there are some good places in Minnesota to dive. It's not all bad. Some of them are great. The Great Lakes, Lake Superior, actually a really good dive spot.
Cold
It's
though.
cold. It's really cold. You have to have a specific wetsuit to go in, but that water is crystal clear. And surprisingly, Lake Superior also has rip currents,
Okay.
tides. They have rogue waves. That lake reacts very similar to how oceans react. So that is the closest we can get in Minnesota for oceans, but you'd be surprised how similar it is.
Yeah, I remember my first trip out of the country was at Rio de Janeiro, and the waves were crashing in, and I was out there trying to be macho and stuff, thinking I was going to muscle the wave. Learned early
Yeah,
that
it's
that don't work.
it's pretty powerful. Surprisingly too, you're not gonna feel it underwater either. When you're scuba diving, I actually one time did go scuba diving during a very not a very large storm, but it was raining and the waves were definitely taller than me, probably 5.5, or I'm about 5'7", so like 6 feet tall waves. And as soon as you go into the ocean and you submerge, you have no problems. There's no wave action, that you're not being tossed around. It's very calm and very peaceful underwater. And that's why it's one of my favorite hobbies on the planet. It's just such a peaceful way to just experience the oceans. The bubble effect is very relaxing. They actually use scuba diving for PTSD victims as well as veterans who have experienced war. They use
Oh,
scuba diving as a relaxation technique to calm their PTSD and their panic attacks, which is really interesting. So, it's also worked with autistic individuals who feel the need to have like almost a hug on them all the time because the gear is it can be very constricting if you're claustrophobic. Scuba diving probably isn't for you. We do work with students if they are claustrophobic to kind of calm them down. We work on techniques and breathing exercises, but for autistic individuals, it actually has a more relieving effect because it's definitely feeling of a constricting kind of feeling, which is almost like being swaddled like a baby. It's really, really cool. I've had a lot of individuals who are autistic tell me that scuba diving is one of their favorite things to do because of that constriction, which is really interesting to me because I did
it is
not
kind
know
of
that.
interesting. All the other
Yeah,
things that can come out of it, because I can see how a person could feel, you know, constricted, and they get nervous, and then when they get into the water, it kind of relaxes them, and that's
it's
interesting.
very it's so
Who
soothing,
would
and you
have
don't have
thunk
to
it? I
worry
thought it
about
was just
holding your
getting out of the
breath.
tank and jumping over the boat.
Yeah, you would like to think it'd be that easy. It once you get the hang of it, yeah, it really is that easy because when you're
Well,
putting the gear together and all of that, it's just really
Liz, we've gone for about 23 minutes here, so I'm
oh, look
gonna
at that.
sign this off. It just kind of zipped through. We covered a lot
It
there.
went so fast.
And what I do with this is I put the video on some blogs and propagate it out and do some keyword work on it, and then I try and share it with people that I think that are relevant to it, like event planners for the event element of it. So I'm gonna
Perfect.
put you into the green room, but and there's by the way in there there's some digital hors d'oeuvres, some
Oh,
Girl Scout
I
cookies
will
and
have to get more of those. I
yeah,
saw those earlier and I didn't get any. So now
delicious.
I'm gonna make sure I eat those.
So is there anything else you want to share before I let you go in there?
I don't think so. Just do your research about the oceans. Know that they're just as important as our environments here in Minnesota. Our effect here in Minnesota does affect everything else around the world. So just keep that in your brain.
Holistically speaking. Okay,
Yes.
perfect.
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much for your time.
Bye. Thank you.
Well, there you have it. That was our friend Liz. She's like the mermaid mentor. So she knows a lot about this stuff. I never really delved into it. Like I said, when I considered it, I kind of got scared about the idea of not being able to breathe. Maybe I got some kind of paranoia thing. But this is again how you get a hold of Liz right there. Easy to remember, diveone.org. And then this is a little ta-da. So it's a Get Dive Certified and the Marine Science classes at diveone.org. So there you have it. Enough. So I'm going to sign off. Be good, be kind, be nice. Did I say be nice? I did. Be nice.